this one here is from Fox News. This is not great. So the title is Shooting Suspect Frequently Made Radical Statements. Sister tells officials. Now, how radical were these statements? I think we'll find out while we're watching this video. But, my point, the point that I would make certainly remains, which is if you're making radical statements, why aren't you being referred to the police, especially if you're making claims of violence or supporting violence? Like, those are the types of things where it's like you go to the police, you nod your head, as you're sitting, with them at dinner, you take that last bite of macaroni and cheese and say, excuse me, I must use the restroom. And then you go to the bathroom and call 911. Like, that's what you do in a situation like this. You don't just be like, well, that's a radical statement, and then like keep on skipping and whistling down the street. Like that's not the proper response to this. But let's see the totality of this before we do like a full assessment and judgment of this fact.
Well, the suspected gunman Cole Allen will appear in a federal courtroom tomorrow. Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche says it was likely President Trump that he was targeting, along with administration officials during last night's shooting. Let's bring in Bill Malugin. He's got more on this. I mean, it really is kind of a fascinating thing, Bill. You and I were both there. Yeah. You were at the same table John Roberts was talking earlier. You were at the same table that John Roberts was at. And for us to get over there so we could kind of coalesce and figure out what was going on and a coverage plan and so forth took a fair bit because the tables were very close together. Oh, yeah, we were all packed in there like sardines. Yeah. Wild experience, and I think we all felt like 3 to 5 seconds of panic as we were figuring out what was going on in that room. But in the meantime, the White House is telling Fox News that law enforcement has recovered a manifesto belonging to that alleged shooter in which he said he wanted to target Trump administration officials. He also apparently had all sorts of anti-Trump and anti-Christian content on his social media profiles. Now, multiple federal. That's interesting because, he claimed to be a Christian and claimed to be a member of a church. So anti-Christian stuff, I mean, to an extent that very much makes sense. A whole lot of, he seemed to be a progressive Christian. A whole lot of, the progressive Christian mantra is tearing down, is geared towards tearing down the church, attacking the church, attacking various churches as well as church members and traditional Christian ideologies, in theology. But still blatantly anti-Christian somewhat surprises me. James Talarico would say things that were heretical, but he would never, oppose Christ verbally. So, I do find that a little surprising. Maybe this is Fox News doing some editorializing here, which certainly would not shock me at all. Law enforcement sources tell us that the suspect has been ID'd as 31-year-old Cole Allen of Torrance, California. We are told he was initially talking to law enforcement after his arrest. So they have a foil over him. Was he naked when he did this? So, or maybe he was just not wearing as much and he was cold. But, typically if you see someone wrapped up in foil, usually like they're in extremely cold weather, like by law enforcement, usually they're in extremely cold weather, or they are nude, right? And they cover nude individuals. Law enforcement does. So that is interesting and does not lead very much credence to him being smart or at least being sane. Admitting his intent was to target the Trump administration, but he has since stopped talking and is no longer being cooperative. Now, those sources tell Fox that Cole checked into the Washington Hilton Hotel on Friday, the day before he allegedly carried out this attack. And Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche explained on Fox this morning how it appears he got to D.C. from California.
What we have learned and what they've learned just overnight is that it appears he traveled from Los Angeles through Chicago to Washington, D.C., and it appears he traveled by train during both legs of that trip. As far as motivation, we are still looking into that. It appears he was targeting members of the administration, but I say that generally because that's all we know right now. We don't have any specifics beyond that.
Now, the White House tells Fox that Allen had previously attended a No Kings protest in California, and his family had actually notified police about a manifesto he had sent to them prior to this attack. His sister reportedly...
The suspect was known to police. You can't make this up. You can't make this up. The police were called about a manifesto that he wrote, and what did they do? Wait for him to run into the lobby before they did anything to stop him? That is ridiculous. Now, maybe the manifesto wasn't as radical, right? I know Destiny has made manifestos, and they're just political ideologies and statements, but still, that's a bright red flag. Maybe they were wearing the sunglasses that day, but no, this is a massive failure.
He told investigators during an interview that he frequently made radical statements and planned to, quote, do something. Now, last night, Jeanine Pirro, the U.S. attorney here in Washington, announced that Cole has been charged with using a firearm during a crime of violence, as well as assault on a federal officer with a dangerous weapon. He is scheduled to make his first appearance in federal court sometime tomorrow, Trace.
The unclear thing for me, Bill, and maybe you have information because I haven't been able to find it, is they apparently the family notified police in New London, Connecticut,
yes.
Right? So New London, Connecticut, the family does not live in New London, Connecticut. We don't know. I mean, we're saying, well, like the president said with Jackie Heinrich earlier, he's like, well, listen, I wish the New London police had contacted. We don't know that they didn't. We don't know that they
didn't. We also don't know exactly what the connection to New London is, if that's where one family member was or something. We'll wait to find that out. But we do at least know that apparently the brother contacted law enforcement and felt something was off. And
those lines on the screens in the background are very distracting. It makes me think that someone went and smashed the screens with hammers. It's very distracting.
That the sister who's being interviewed right now has said that this was a guy who was making some statements that were jumping out to us that were pretty outlandish, and that he was plotting something, quote, planning to do something about the issues facing the country. So they had enough red flags to the point where they contacted law enforcement. We don't know how soon it was before the dinner last night, but somebody reached out and felt something was wrong, and then we saw what happened last night.
So you had a guy who was in the Caltech Christian Club, right? He had one of his former, people in that, goes to anti-Christian, right, making these statements, and he just seemed to get more radical as time went on. Right?
Yeah, and we'll let the investigation play out as to how he was able to get in there and get so close and be a guest of that hotel, as apparently any member of the public could check in there in the days before. So
it is fascinating. Yeah. Bill Malugin,
wow.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
And you know what?
All right, thanks for watching. Check out my
people are going to hate on individuals for saying this, right? But I will say that this is a case for events like this happening in a controlled environment on White House property, right? Donald Trump has proposed the ballroom. This is raising people's hackles. I just think that in general, it makes sense to have a secure area where you can do things like this, especially when you have a president. The unfortunate dichotomy or symphony of Donald Trump being so unpopular and the American left being so radicalized and violent. Those two things are not ingredients for something healthy, right? This is more like ingredients for mustard gas. So, we need to find, I think that, the administration absolutely must be rethinking the venues they choose for this and how they secured those venues. You can say, oh, there should be a ballroom or they should be doing this in the basement of the White House all the live long day. But let's be honest, most areas of the White House I don't think any area of the White House actually has the capacity to include all the people you would include in a White House Correspondents' Dinner. The ballroom certainly is far from finished. So I believe Donald Trump is trying to host or resume the White House Correspondents' Dinner next week. So there's not a lot of time to do some immediate action. But this is just not great. And this is a massive failure of the Secret Service as well, especially if they were alerted to the manifesto that this guy wrote beforehand and didn't do anything about it. Extremely troubling. Whenever you hear about the Secret Service, it's usually because they didn't do their job. I don't think that they did their job well enough here. They certainly did their job, well enough to keep people from dying, but you don't even want to the president of the United States to be in a position like this ever. So, definitely got to rethink some Secret Service policies and security protocols in the wake of all of this.